Welcome to the Pandaverse. I'm Elgon, the E and C and E.
And I'm Christine, the C in the C and E.
And we're joined again today by Mike Eberhardt and Benny Sims. And we warned you all about it about 3 weeks ago, I think it was. But we were talking about a audiobook that was being released back 3 weeks ago. And now Benny's got a new novel coming out tomorrow.
Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
You can get the print version of it right now. You can order it right now. You don't have to wait until midnight.
Right now. Go get it.
But if you like the Kindle version, that'll be available tomorrow. And for anyone that's listening anywhere in the world, it'll be available through Ingram tomorrow as well on EPUB. So it should be available through iBook and all the other outlets around the world, as well as Amazon. This isn't an exclusive Amazon release.
Good deal.
So congratulations, Benny.
Yay!
Thank you very much for that.
I was privileged to be one of the first people to read this thing, and
oh my gosh, it's all you talked about for like weeks.
yeah.
I mean, I can't complain though, because it is pretty freaking good, man.
Thank you, Christine. That's nice of you to say. I appreciate it.
It's a good Halloween book, not because it's got witches and ghosts and things like that in it, but because it's got a really disturbing character.
Yeah. He is he's just right on the verge of going off the deep end, or he's already just gone over the ledge. It's I don't know, you call it a psychological thriller, I guess, maybe would be a proper term for it. But it does fit for Halloween. There's no doubt about that. There's some scary parts.
I heard somebody refer to it as his cheese is slid off his cracker.
I'll take that. That works. Yeah.
That's funny because he seems so nonchalant about it all, killing and going about his plan and what he's going to do. It's just so matter of fact. It is like cheese and crackers, just like, oh, today I'm going to go get this and that. I'm going to kill a guy too. Like, It's just put it on my list of to-dos today.
Just got to look at it from his perspective. It's just kind of a hobby that he's got. He's given himself a challenge that he thinks he can meet. And as long as he meets
this is a serial killer with objectives.
Yes. Serial killer with objectives.
And had he put forth that kind of effort earlier in his life, he might have been a lot more successful and significant. But as it is, he's, I picture the guy as being around my age,
Yeah. I kind of put him, right around my age. Elgin, you and I are not too far apart in age, I don't think.
Yeah.
He's just, this is a guy who has lived a life where he's just never amounted to anything. And he's tried, or he thinks he's tried, and his life is just gone to pieces. He's divorced from his wife. He's got his only son he's estranged from his only son. He's never got
his wife married a younger man.
Yeah. And that was a really horrible blow for him to his ego. He's never made the promotions at work, at his job, and he's just mad at the world. And he thinks, well, all the goals that I've set all my life I've never met, so I'm going to set a goal that I can meet while also lashing out at the world. And so he sets a goal of to become a serial killer and kill one person a week for an entire year, 365 or 52 weeks worth. 365 days, and he wants to kill one person a week. And so as long as he's got his one murder per week, he's chilled, he's good. So,
and he's gone through the effort of learning what the best way to kill somebody is without blood, because he doesn't like blood.
Right. He found out early in his life that he got nauseous when he saw the sight of blood. And so he didn't want to have a messy murder. He just wanted to basically just end their life, and then it'd be, that'd be it. So he learned Israeli martial art called Krav Maga, which is what they teach Israeli soldiers. And it's got some deadly techniques, and plus he learned some things along the way also. And his situation with the blood and nausea and all that actually kind of changes over time. Not to throw out too much of a spoiler, but it does change over time, and he changes his techniques a couple of times throughout the book.
Yeah, things get progressively harder for him as the book goes on.
Yeah, and that's because of a major reveal in the book. Something happens to him that it makes it harder for him to continue his year-long journey of being a serial killer.
So Benny, what was your inspiration for this? How did you, I don't want to say something stupid, like how did you come up with this character? But what inspired you to create this guy? Like how did this come around?
I was wondering if it was semi-autobiographical,
Right, should I worry about hanging out with you in person?
Yeah. It's totally, I did that one year. I just took a year off from work. No, I didn't.
Yeah, I did that 1 year.
We'll
hear about it in a few years.
I started writing this book years ago, actually about a month after I finished writing Code Gray in 2014. And I was, I've been seeing all these serial killer shows on TV and read a couple of serial killer books. I always kind of like those, just the intrigue about them. And I thought, well, I don't want to do the same old type of serial killer, somebody who takes a trophy and, I wanted to have something different. So I got to thinking, and then again, this was about a month after Code Gray had been finished. I'm thinking, what would inspire somebody, to be a killer? And then so I came up with a story of this lifetime loser. And then I thought, what if he just killed just for the span of 1 year? And just, how writers are, we always do the what if thing. That's what we tend to ask each other ourselves is what if. So, what if he just made a challenge to himself to kill one person a week for an entire year? And I just kind of went off on that. And it just kind of grew into a book. To be honest with you, I actually intended for it originally to be a long short story.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of grew. It just kept going, and I realized that I couldn't finish from beginning to end in the length of a short story. So I just kept writing and made it a novel.
He seems very relatable from what I've read of the story so far, which I think is somewhat alarming because he seems so normal. And then he'll just have a thought like, oh, and by the way, I'm going to wring her neck. And then, oh, and, I love cinnamon buns and we're going to go get something to drink. It's so crazy, just the banality of life, how it just, he just seems so normal.
You can find yourself identifying with him, which is the most disturbing part of it.
I think the thing that helps that is I decided to write this in first person as opposed to third person. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing everything from his perspective, from his eyes. That actually helps people relate to stories a little bit better. But I didn't want to make him some kind of super killer or some kind of James Bond type or somebody who gets out of trouble easy. I didn't want somebody like that. That's just, I think, it's not very realistic, and it's also been way overused. It's been way overused stories like these. Yeah. So I started making just a regular guy who had regular life problems, family and job and all that, and thrown in with some health issues and things like that I think just about everybody in one way or another can relate to. Not necessarily the murder part, but all the other that he goes through, people can relate to a lot of it.
But you wonder about the serial killer part, because how much negativity in your life do you need to push you over that edge?
Right.
Because this guy seems like a normal person, and he's nice to people, and he's got a job to do. He's self-employed. He's self-employed serial killer, and he's got a job to do. But after he finishes that job, he's fine. He's ready to He's ready to engage with people as need be.
Yeah, go sightseeing and see some things he's always wanted to see on his
Well,
road trip.
The worst part for me was, at the time I was getting up real early in the morning because, Vegas is really hot during the day, so you don't want to be out in the sun that much.
Mhm.
And I would get up early in the morning and go for long walks. And there are some areas that I would walk through that are a little sketchy, and a couple of times people have made a noise as I walked by, and they were like, sitting in the shadows, and I'm like, and here I am reading this book.
Oh my gosh!
And going out into that environment every morning, and going, how close have I brushed with death?
Right.
Right. But what don't they say? Like, you walk past a murderer.
You don't know.
Like, yeah, they say, right? They say you walk past a murderer at least twice or something like that in your lifetime, that they've thought about killing you.
Oh man.
I've had more than a couple of people think about killing me. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
We're not counting ex-girlfriends or anything, right? Like nothing like that.
No. Ex-wives.
Right. Yeah.
You don't ever know. It is it's always been like that, not just in today's world. It's been, people killing each other for no reason centuries ago. But you never know when somebody's passing you in the street, well, they're just going to pull out a gun and shoot you or stab you or break your neck or whatever. You just don't really know. And that's not to, put this unnecessary fear into people's minds, but it's just maybe be a little bit aware and just realize, hey, it's a mean world out there. But that's the paradox of this character. This main character is he's evil only like on 1 or 2 days a week. And then the rest of the time, like you said, he's a normal guy who's sightseeing and talking with families and just, being nice to waitresses and bartenders and things like that.
Well, this book's kind of a travel log for the continental United States, the lower 48.
Yeah.
It's kind of a travel log with a serial killer doing the narration.
Yeah, right. You ought to have seen the research I had to do to write this, because the vast majority of the locations in this book I've never been to. I just had to seriously just do a lot of research. I kept a Google map of the United States open on my desktop all the time. I would,
you did a really good job of it, because I've been to a lot of the places you've been to. The only state I haven't been to is Delaware, and it's kind of because you have to want to go to Delaware to get there.
Yeah,
because it's like not on the way to anywhere else.
Yes, yeah, and it, it doesn't take you long to go through it anyway. It's such a small state. But I wanted, this guy to also have a little bit of self-reflection. He calls it his psychiatric therapy or whatever while he's driving from one location to another. So I'm like, well, he can't really drive a lot if he's in one location. So I'm just making go zigzag all over the country. So I would try to find places that were several hundred miles away from the place that he was at one time. And then that would be his next destination, 700 to 1,000 miles away. And he would drive that whole time. And I used those instances for him to, discuss what's going on in my mind. Why do I feel this way? Why do I hate certain people and don't hate other people? Just a psychological evaluation of himself. And in order to do that, in order to figure out where he was going, I had to have, like I said, a map of the United States open all the time. And I would just, plot out how far he had to go and figure out where he was going to go. And then,
well, he has figured in some logical paranoia into his routine, because he knows at some point he's going to screw up, and the authorities are going to catch on to what he's doing, and this is the reason why he's zigzagging around the country, and he's changing his the IDs that he uses to get rental cars, and he's mixing things up quite a bit to keep throwing them off, and he seems to be succeeding pretty well with that for a very long time.
Yeah. And that was my intent. I mean, you can't make it very far if you're just staying in one place and wearing the same, set of clothes and driving the same car. You've always got to be changing. So I had to figure out how he was going to do that, because it takes money to do that. And that was one reason why I made him a certain age, to where he had been working with a company for so many years, and he could take a retirement, and just so happened that he would get a little bit of a pension, and he sold his house, all his worldly belongings, and got $100 and something thousand, and just used that as his bankroll for his hobby, or his little excursion that he did. And that's what he used to, rent cars, hotel rooms, travel, gas, all that kind of stuff.
The original title of this was 52, which makes sense now that the foundation and everything of it. But I remember we were discussing, whether that's a good title or not at the time, and I think I was concerned that people might think it was about cards or something.
Yeah, I wasn't a real fan of 52, but when I started writing it, that was the best thing I could come up with at that time. But it just never really had enough oomph to it, if you know what I mean. It just wasn't quite catchy enough. Mm-hmm. So I picked a couple of other titles, Mile Marker Zero, and I had another one called The Serial Killer Gods. And I asked a couple of people in Pandaverse, what do you think? Which one would you prefer of these two? And it was, without question, Mile Marker Zero. And I've also found out something else since I decided on that title, is there's something about the letter Z that people tend to remember.
Interesting.
I've got a friend a college friend of mine. I was telling him about this book, and he was like, "So what's the name of it again?" And this is like the third time I talked to him about it. And I told him about the first time we talked, and about the third time we talked about it, he says, "So what's the name of this book again? Is it like Red Zone or something like that?" Well, you got the Z part right. It's Mile Marker Zero. So, there was a big famous novel several years ago, World War Z, about zombies.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And that's for something about the letter Z is memorable, or at least it is to me. And I've noticed other people have said things like that before too. So I don't know. I kind of like the double entendre of Mile Marker Zero. There's a place in Key West, Florida, where U.S. Highway 1 ends
and begins. Depends on which direction you're going.
That's exactly. It depends on whether you're headed south or north. That's exactly right. And that plays a pivotal role in the book, but also it alluded to all the miles that he was putting on the highways. And for his victims, it was their last mile. It was the end of the road for them. So, I thought, well, we'll just leave it Mile Marker Zero. It kind of works in multiple ways.
It really does. That's fun. I hadn't thought about it being Mile Marker Zero for the victim.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've gone all this time, and we just, like about 5 minutes ago, started talking about the title of the book. When I'm editing this, I'll put the actual book cover early in the whole thing, so people know what it is. So, Mike, are you going to do a little sectional reading for us?
I sure am. I'm going to read a few pages here from towards the beginning of the book. Benny, do you want to set the scene? The bison chapter?
He's traveling the country, and he's up in, I believe it's South Dakota. I believe is where he is. And he, all his life, he has always wanted to see a buffalo. Never seen one before. And he's driving through South Dakota, and he sees this herd of buffalo, and he pulls over on the side of the road, and decides he wants to look at one. And now previously he had been in another town. I forget the name of the town, Bismarck, I think. I don't remember exactly where he had been like the day before. And he had a staring contest with a guy who he called the two-legged buffalo. Because this was like a giant of a man who just happened to catch his eye, and he looked at him, and the two-legged buffalo guy kind of stared him down, kind of daring him. And I don't know if it'll come into play in this reading or not. Depends on how far Mike goes with this. But it does come into play prominently later on in the book. So right now he is pulling over and is on the side of the road and is going to look at some buffalo.
All right, here we go. On the road behind me, a car passed, going no faster than walking speed. I turned and saw an elderly couple in their 1980-something Buick slowing down to get a look at the buffalo. An old couple in an old couple car. The husband was driving while the wife held a cell phone out the passenger window taking a picture. I didn't consider killing one of them, even though it would have been easy to do. But since there were two of them and I needed only one body, I left them alone. Besides, it would have been hard to kill one of them and keep the other from calling the cops on me, so I didn't bother. I was more concerned about seeing my first real live buffalo. Plus, I had nearly a week to get my next victim. I had plenty of time. A low, distant growl made me turn back around to the buffalo herd. 100 yards away, one of them was walking straight towards me. It didn't have a calf tagging along, and it was absolutely huge. The hump above its shoulders must have been 6 feet high. No doubt about it, this was a male, the alpha male, and he was coming to check me out. He had to make sure I didn't pose a threat to his cows and calves, no matter what side of the fence I was on. Every few steps, he let out another growl. He didn't sound mad or aggressive, but there was no doubt he meant business. My gut became a nervous knot as he got closer, but I didn't move away from the fence. I was going to hold my ground, to show I wasn't afraid of him, even if I was actually terrified. It took a few minutes for the lumbering bull to reach me. He stopped 10 feet from the fence, sniffing at the air and blowing huge wads of buffalo snot onto the ground. He pawed at the dirt and growled again. I couldn't tell if he was challenging me or if this was normal behavior for a male buffalo. On the road behind me, another car passed, but I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes on the buffalo as the sound of the car faded. The big guy in front of me didn't pay attention to the car either. He kept his eyes on me. Every few seconds, he would growl, but it sounded more like he was curious rather than aggressive. I remembered I had a cinnamon bun in the car that I'd bought at a convenience store before I left Bismarck, and for some reason, I thought it would be fun to feed it to him. My rental car was only 15 feet away, so I backed away from the fence and reached through the passenger window to grab the cinnamon bun from the front seat. I peeled away the wrapper, broke it in half, and held it out for him. He snorted, looked to his right and then his left, and took a short step forward. He snorted again and stood there looking at me. He was clearly interested in the bun, but it was being offered by a human, and most animals have a natural fear of humans. But something told me this wasn't the first time somebody had offered him food from the other side of the fence. He growled again, lowered his head, and took 3 steps forward. I still had the bun in my hand, held out for him to take if he wanted it. He definitely wanted it. I've heard that buffalo like sweets. I remember reading that when the movie Dances with Wolves was filmed, a pile of cookies was used as bait for a scene where a buffalo charged one of the actors. In the movie, it looked like he was about to attack a young boy. But in reality, the trained buffalo was running full speed toward a pile of cookies. I imagine that when a buffalo wants something, you'd best get out of the way, or at least have something between you and it. Like I said, thank goodness for barbed wire fences. After another brief pause, he walked the rest of the way to my hand. He reached out with his tongue to taste it, realized it was delicious, and pulled it out of my hand and into his mouth. It was almost delicate, the way he took it. Because of his size, I thought he would snatch it out of my hand the way a wild dog would. Instead, he grabbed it like he was a mild-mannered dairy cow. He chewed the bun like it was a cud, a slow, relaxed chew, followed by licking all around his mouth with his tongue. Then he looked at me like he wanted more. He didn't growl or snort or blow snot on me or anything like that. He just looked and waited. On the road behind me, a low rumbling got gradually louder. I'd first heard it in the distance, almost on a subconscious level, right after the buffalo took the cinnamon bun from my hand. The closer it got, the more I noticed it, until it was right next to me. I turned and saw a motorcycle rolling to a stop beside my car, its engine idling, sounding like a mechanical version of the buffalo's growl. The noise implied there was a lot more power available if needed. It was the two-legged buffalo from the Riverside Park in Bismarck, with his rode-hard and put-up-wet girlfriend sitting behind me. Is this a coincidence? Or was he following me? He looked at me through a pair of mirrored sunglasses while his girlfriend looked at something on her cell phone. It was like a continuation of the stare down he gave me at the Riverside Park yesterday. His face had no expression, but it was obvious he had a problem with me. Maybe he didn't like anyone looking at him. Maybe he was the type who considered something like that as a challenge to his manhood. I guess I could have stared back at him, but I wasn't here to do that. I came to see a buffalo, the four-legged kind. So I turned back to my new friend on the other side of the fence and held out the other half of the cinnamon bun. By now, I was confident enough to lean forward with my head, arms, and torso well past the top strand of barbed wire. That also told the motorcycle guy that he wasn't worth my time. People with a certain type of inferiority complex get angry over many things. One thing that eats at them is being ignored. Show a person with this mental condition they're not worth your time, and they'll respond in a way that'll force you to pay attention to them. They may have a tantrum where they throw things, or they might resort to violence, or they'll create some type of loud noise to focus attention on themselves. As the buffalo reached out with his tongue to lick the cinnamon bun, the guy gunned the engine. The motorcycle roared like a prehistoric dragon. The sudden blast of noise startled me, and I flinched hard. But the buffalo flinched harder. Buffalo have a dual arsenal of horns and hooves to fight off a threat. If they can't gore something with those short hook-shaped horns, they will spin and kick the hell out of it with their rear legs. And when they're running away from something, their horns aren't available, but their hooves are. The buffalo bolted away, and he lashed out at the noise with his feet. Since I was leaning across the fence and put my upper body in the line of fire, my head was turned toward the motorcycle as a huge hoof slammed into my ear. Might as well have been a sledgehammer because it certainly felt like it. The blow knocked me 5 feet backwards, but not before a barb on the fence dragged across my rib cage. Should have been knocked unconscious, but for some reason I wasn't. Everything turned sideways, and I backpedaled and teetered and stumbled until my legs buckled. I wound up on my knees and right hand, with my left hand covering my ear. I heard the guy and his girlfriend cackling over the high-pitched ringing in my head. Then the prehistoric dragon roared again, and they sped away. I don't know if he laughed because he thought it was funny or because he caused it. Either way, it pissed me off that he drove away after he knew I was hurt. I crawled to my car and used it to steady myself while I rose to my feet. I was out of breath. It's amazing how a blow to the head can knock the wind out of you as easily as a kick to the stomach. After several hard blinks, I could see well enough to take inventory of my condition. I wobbled to the door and sat down in the passenger seat. The visor had a mirror on it, and I could see a trickle of blood from a 2-inch long cut just above the earlobe. I guess I was hurt too badly to get sick from the sight of blood because my stomach didn't get queasy like I thought it would. I also had a combination of mud and buffalo shit matted in my hair and stuck to my jaw. I flipped the visor up and got out of the car. With one hand pressed to my ear, I braced myself against the door as I assessed my situation. I was hurt. Probably with a concussion, with a lacerated ear that needed stitches, and there was nobody around. After a minute or two, I realized that I had to drive myself to help because help wasn't coming to me. After I sat down in the driver's seat, I felt a sting from the cut across my abdomen. I looked down to make sure I wasn't bleeding to death, and I saw that my shirt had a long gash across it, and that made me even madder. My damn shirt was ripped. That son of a bitch made me rip my shirt. I couldn't believe it. Wasn't it enough that I nearly got killed by the animal version of an army tank? Hell no. This was literally adding insult to injury. Right then and there, I made up my mind. The motorcycle guy was going to be one of my victims no matter what it took. I was as mad as I had been in a long time, and this guy was going to pay with his life. And I was going to tear his shirt to shreds.
All right. Great, Mike. That's great.
Thank you. So fun.
I could just listen to you for hours.
Aw.
I'm just saying.
Thank you. That's so nice.
That's why I wanted Mike to read and not me, because leave it to professionals. Leave it to do something like that.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you for having me here to read today. It's so fun. What a great story you've written.
That was great. Thank you, Mike.
My pleasure.
You can see from this passage that the guy does have a well-functioning
Right. Yeah.
mental process going on where he evaluates things.
Yeah.
And and this guy that, the two-legged buffalo, he's an asshole.
Yes.
Seems like it, no doubt.
Yeah. He not to be too much of a spoiler, but he shows up later on in the book.
Yeah.
In a big way. And that's all I'll say about that. But something else that I wanted to make sure that my main character, he talks about, the guy driving off and didn't even care whether he was hurt or not, and like he was insulted, that the guy didn't really care what had happened to him. And I don't remember where it is in the book, but he kind of is talking to himself after something has happened. And he's like, what has happened to this world? Why are people so mean to each other? Why, and then he goes out and kills me. So,
well, he's got standards.
Yeah,
he does. He wants that social contract to be enforced, but he also has this cool new hobby.
right.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. So it was a really fun book to write. Something about writing in first person just kind of flows to me a little bit.
I write in first person. I love writing in first person.
Yeah. The only bad thing about it is you can't see around corners, like
right.
But it's more relatable to the reader.
Yes.
I went to Killer Nashville back in August, and you meet all kinds of writers, and they give you advice, and you just pick up on things just from talking to people. And one of the best bits of advice I think I've ever heard for authors is write from a reader's perspective and read from a writer's perspective. And so I'm thinking, that's exactly right. You want to write something that a reader enjoys reading, and in a manner that a reader enjoys reading it. Not, the readers don't like to struggle to read anything. So you make it easy and relatable as you can. And that's why this book, written in first person, to me, it just kind of fell out of my fingers,
Well, I think you did a good job, and Mike did a great job of bringing the character to life.
Yeah. By the way, Mike, and Elgon, you may want to edit this part out, but Mike, your version of Code Gray should be there in a day or two.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited about that. I'm like a serial killer with books as my trophies. I try to get a signed copy of the ones I narrate. So thank you for doing that for me. I really appreciate it.
All right. The spoiler, guys, Mike's a serial killer. So
I kill the authors and I take their names and write their next books.
There you go.
That's what we've decided.
Yeah, we were talking about that while you were getting on.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the technical difficulties, we decided we just interview me, and I just changed my name to Benny Sims. Like, yep, I wrote it. I was inspired by the guy who wrote Code Gray, and I took his name.
You didn't record it.
And you're actually John Doe, Benny.
So. Okay. Well, it's an autobiography, so
So
yeah.
funny. What was the your favorite part of writing this book, of the process? You don't have to give away plot points or anything, but in terms of the process, what did you enjoy the most in this book versus maybe other books you've written?
Well, the research that I did was, I mean, just figuring out little towns and villages and landmarks all over the country. I'm telling you, it was really, really cool. And you know, there were a lot of places that I'd been to, or maybe driven past, but most of them, like I said before, most of them weren't places that I've been to. So just doing the research for that, and then I had to keep track of a calendar. You know, I had to keep track of what day of the week it was and all that. So I had to make a calendar in Excel.
Oh, sure.
And I just made a 30 or 31 day calendar with 12 tabs in Excel, and I would just put, you know, large blocks in Excel and tell what town he was in, and describe briefly the character that the victim, his next victim.
Mm-hmm.
And I used the year 2016 was my calendar.
You know, Benny, if somebody finds that calendar, they're going to have questions for you. I'm saying.
That's a good point, Christine.
If you haven't deleted that, it's saved on the cloud.
I've actually got it still on my computer, so I'm probably. But have you ever heard the old saying, is you don't want to look up a search history? No, not at all. So yeah, I'm going to keep that. It's actually a kind of a cool memento, keeping that calendar.
Yeah, for sure.
Worked out really good for me. So yeah.
Well,
the character carries a calendar around with him to keep track of what he's doing too.
Yeah, and I just had basically an electronic version of what he had. I didn't put X. You know, every Sunday he would have a breakfast of pancakes and coffee, and you know, to celebrate his most recent murder, and then he would put a red X on the Sunday indicating, well, that week's gone. I got a victim. And of course, you know, there's a metaphor for the calendar later on in the book, how it's just like him. It's old and worn out and ragged, and still kind of useful, you know. So that, I don't know where that line came out, but where I got that, that's another one that just kind of fell out of my fingers when I was writing it. But calendars played a big important part making this book. Sure did.
Now the book again is called Mile Marker Zero. It's available at midnight tonight. So it's Wednesday, October 19th, 2022. That's the launch date worldwide in ebook and print.
Yep.
And it's a damn good book. You probably need to read this, especially if you like stories that are going to give you the creeps before Halloween. And don't go out on long early morning walks in the dark after reading this, because
in Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas, right?
In Las Vegas.
Because there are a number of homeless people here.
Yeah.
Yep. You don't want a panhandler to handle you.
You know, so
yeah, with a pan.
Wow.
Exactly right. Yeah. So it's I'm excited about it. I'm you know, anxious to see how well it's received.
It's a really good book. Wow. All right. Well, Benny, you got to get back to writing your next book.
Yeah. In the process.
I hope it's a Code Gray sequel. I want to read the next one. I want to find out what's happening to those guys.
Mike, I can't wait until you get assigned this to make an audio book.
Me too.
That'll be fun. This looks like a really fun one.
Yeah, I think so.
Characters, Mike, so just be ready. Not 80 something like you've done before, but there are several characters in it. So I'm looking forward to that happening.
That'll be fun.
I can't wait until you vocalize the buffalo, the two-legged buffalo.
Oh, me too.
that sounds fun. Challenge accepted.
All right, good.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night, and Best of luck on the launch tomorrow, Benny. Looking
All right.
forward to
Congratulations.
Looking forward to seeing what
Congratulations,
kind of sales
Benny.
gets.
So awesome.
Appreciate the support, guys. It's been great talking to you.
All right, you guys have a good night.
You too.
All right.
Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.